Hey everybody, Bill in Virginia here, and another weekend and another start on a video. So what I'm showing is more vegetation work that I did after the last video ended. So you can see I've been adding ground cover near the seam where the bottom half of the mountain and the top half of the mountain meet. So I've been using clump foliage and then building it up in layers to give it, a late fall look. So just torn pieces of clump foliage, glued that on with full strength glue, kind of pressed it in place a little bit, then came back and gave it a shot of isopropyl alcohol, and then added dilute 50-50 white glue to kind of cover it, saturate it. And then came back in with various shades of smaller ground foam, kind of coarse texture but not super coarse, different colors, sort of burnt grass, kind of a dark green, and then came in on that with fine blended mixes to sprinkle on it, as well as then some orange and reds, to make it look like I've got fall colors kind of starting, where some of the vegetation has been hit by frost already and it's starting to change. I've also used some of the fall colors on deciduous trees that I'm started up over on this area here above the tunnel portals. Again, kind of give it an early fall look. First frost of the season is hit, trees are starting to turn. They haven't really lost their leaves yet, but they're starting to do that. So I did have a request on one of the videos to show how I do make the trees. So I'm going to kind of give a quick overview of just the processes that I do. All of these are kits and some ready-made. Most of the ready-made ones I've already put onto the layout, so I've been digging into the woodland scenics, and that's what I'm going to show. Just what I've been doing on building, and then how I shade them to look like fall trees. So that's going to be the next piece of this one. So right in here is my little stand-up workshop area in a reasonably uncluttered, well, no, it's cluttered, part of the bench out here in the garage. What you see in this area here is pretty much everything that I do to make a tree. What I've got is a couple of woodland scenics armatures here, one for a pine tree, one for a deciduous tree, and I'll just bend this one into the shape that I want, and the pine tree armature is already done. Now what I use is this product from DAP, Weldwood contact cement. If you try to use just rubber cement and some of the other stuff that's out there, it doesn't really have a good grab. It's not tacky enough. It doesn't really hold the vegetation or the foliage clumps to the armatures. I bought this off I think it was Home Depot. I should have got a smaller can. There's enough in this can that, quite seriously, if I could probably cover my entire garage with trees that I could make off this. It doesn't take much. So I've got that. I've also got various shades and degrees of coarseness, I would call them, for vegetation. I've got coarse turf, burnt grass. I've got more coarse turf, kind of that dark bluish, like blue spruce color. I've got clump foliage, again, sort of that bluish green. Foliage clusters. This comes in sort of a big sheet, and what you'll want to do is then tear it down into smaller chunks. Really about the size of a fingernail is about appropriate for both N scale and HO scale trees, so that you get kind of a full appearance to the tree, but it's not overly thick. You can also use the ready-made cluster pieces like bushes, clump foliage, again from Woodland Scenic. Coming down here, I've got more vegetation clusters. These were in larger pieces, and again, tear them down into smaller pieces. Got the blended turf, the green, where I do the shake and bake of on pretty much all of my trees to give it sort of that finer detail look. For trees that are going to be strictly fall colors, I've got a bag of both orange and yellowish orange JTT fall foliage and ground cover. Notice I kind of keep the colors halfway separate in the bags. It's a big gallon bag, and what I can do is I can kind of grab one side of it when I'm shaking a tree, and I can get most of the color coming from the other side. Now it does eventually mix, which means that my trees are going to all have various shades to them. They're not going to look the same color. They're going to have blends and, you know, gradations of color to them, make them look more natural. So this is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to make a couple of trees and just kind of walk you through the process. The pine tree is going to be real simple. The deciduous tree, I'll add the extra step of making it look like it's ready for fall. So that'll be coming up next. So one thing to note is with this weldwood, it is super strong. You need really good ventilation, and if you don't have good ventilation, leave the cap on the can. You don't have to put it down tight. But if you're working on something, you know, use your brush, go in, get a dab, close it up, because even right now I'm already smelling it and it is really strong, but you know, it's okay for what I'm going to do. And in my garage I can get I can ventilate it fairly easy. So like my other trees, I just have a dab. I don't need a whole lot to it. Start at the top, kind of come down. On pine trees, sometimes I'll do an entire tree. Sometimes I'll leave branches without any glue on it. Just makes it look better. Now I'm going to do this one with sort of this coarse burnt grass color. Real simple for how I make these. It goes into the bag. I give it some spins just to make sure that everything's covered. The glue is very tacky, and when I bring it out, I've got a tree. This is ready to plant. I'm not going to do a whole lot more with this. I might do a little bit of the dab glue and put a little bit more green on it, and I'll probably do it for this one. But right now, if I would put it up near the town, I would kind of leave it this color because it's more dull. It's more fall looking. So we'll set that aside. And the glue is really tacky. It got stuck to my finger here. Okay, we got that. So for the deciduous tree, really simple. You know, you spin the armatures around, kind of spread things in just a variety of different ways. You know, you're wanting it so that when you do put glue on it, it will grab the glue and grab the foliage clusters that are going on it. And it's the same thing. You know, you want to open the can, quick dab. You don't need a lot. More is not better when you're doing this kind of work. And then it's just blobbing it on where the end of the branches are. You don't want to get it all the way to the trunk, otherwise it will fill that in and it will not look the best. It'll look too busy. So I've got that, and what I'm going to do is I'll use this particular color down here, this sort of the lighter green. So tree in, I grab the bag and I just sort of squeeze it a little bit. I get some clumps on it, and then I just sort of spin it fairly hard to get the stuff off. And you know, here we go, and I'll put it a little bit on different areas. There's my tree. It's open, it's not completely closed in, you know, it looks like a nice tree. So I'm going to put this down, and then I'm going to get my glue ready, and then I'll show you the little dab and the additional shake and bake to make a fall tree out of this one, and then add a little bit more color to the pine tree. All right, let's take the pine tree, and I'm going to just use, again, 50% dilute white glue. It's Elmer's, you know, school glue, glue all, basically the same. Again, just dab. You don't need a lot. You want to put it on where there's foliage and vegetation, using a different brush than I normally do so it doesn't pull it up too much. You don't need a lot. This is good enough. Set this aside. I'm going to take my fine-grained green blend, kind of shake it a little bit, spin the tree. There we go. It's got that variation. It's got some nice texture to it. This one is done. This one's ready for planting. Now let's do the deciduous tree. I'm going to be doing the same thing with the deciduous tree. I'm going to be dabbing on glue. Then I will be opening it up, the bag, and depending upon which color I want, if I want a more reddish tree or an orangish tree, I'll choose which side of the bag I want to work with. You know, for early fall colors, you don't need a lot. You know, frost nips it, trees start to turn color. It's hit and miss. You can do it on top, you can do it on bottom. You know, you don't want to saturate everything because that doesn't look right. And then let's open it up and let's do more of an orange color. So I'm going to do more over on this side here. And then again, same thing. You shake it, you spin the tree. There's going to be some natural mixing going on between the two sides, and that's okay. You can kind of see how that is. But then I bring it out, and I've got a fall color tree. This one's been hit by a frost. There's still some green visible, but it is changing colors. Leaves are not ready to drop, but they will soon. And then you can take some of the fine mix and you can sprinkle it around the base of your tree to make it look like leaves are starting to drop. Quick and easy, and you've got some nice looking trees.